this is just a quick video, something I've seen recently, repeatedly in the news and other such things, is the naming of conditions as a disease when they're not a disease. For example, I'll start with the easiest one of all, obesity. It's not a disease. There's no pathogen. You can't catch it. If a normal weight person hangs around with a load of obese people, they don't gradually get fatter, and the obese people don't gradually get thinner. It's not communicable, hence it's not a disease. Okay? Moving on from there, diabetes. Again, not a disease. It's a condition that affects people. It's a blood glucose regulation problem, fundamentally. It's not a disease though, because you can't catch it. If you hang around with people who are diabetic, you won't become diabetic. If you hold hands, hug, kiss, or share a Coke, actually no, that might make you diabetic, but not because you're sharing it with a diabetic person, you won't become diabetic. Okay? Cancer, pretty famously obvious one, not a disease, it's a condition. It's a breakdown in cellular communication. You see, the brain has a method of telling cells in the body to kill themselves. It's called cellulosis. It has a method of doing that and saying, you're not supposed to be doing that, stop and die. And that's why our organs and other parts of the body don't just continue growing. You know, our body parts are generally set to a certain level. Nobody out there is suddenly, their hands aren't continually growing as they get older and just going until they die because they're just a massive hand. It doesn't happen. Our cells have DNA has written into them how big it should be, and it can be impeded by things like starvation and childhood malnutrition and stuff like that. Can literally stunt your growth. But otherwise that stuff's set. And it's only once it breaks down in cellular communication that you can become cancerous. In fact, a cancer has to have that cellulosis link broken in an early part of its mutative stage. All of us, if you get to an adult or even a middle-aged age, will at some point suffer from cancer. It's now believed that if you've reached 30, you probably have had a cancer. And if you haven't experienced any problems with it, it's because your body's killed it and said, no, stop it, die. And it does it. That's what it's meant to do. The problem comes is when that system gets broken down and then it carries on growing and your body can't kill it anymore. Okay? It's not a disease. There's no pathogen. It's a condition. And there are loads of these things, really. Loads of them out there. They're not diseases. ADHD, if you even believe in that sort of thing. Not a disease. It's a condition. You can't catch it. And that's why it annoys me when people refer to them as diseases. They're not. They're not diseases. They're conditions. And they're not going to be cured when we're thinking about them as a disease, because they're not a disease. You can't cure it in that very simplistic sense of giving somebody a vaccine or medication, because it's not a disease. Okay? And most of these things are to an extent, self-perpetuated. Now there are genetic links to these. Only 7% of smokers get lung cancer, allegedly. That's how the stats work out, 7%. I read that in a study recently. It doesn't mean that smoking is not bad for you though. It doesn't mean that people who aren't likely to get lung cancer should just carry on smoking, because smoking causes a whole load of health conditions. But you shouldn't quit smoking specifically because of lung cancer. It's not really a good example. I mean, it's, you know what, it's 7% of people. It's a really tiny number. I mean, yeah, sure, it's quite a big number when you think about the world population. 7 billion people. 7% of that's going to be pretty fucking huge. But everybody smokes, and that's why it's not really a good example. I mean, you know, a good example for reasons to quit smoking is that it's probably going to kill you, one way or another, because smoking kills you in a whole wide variety of ways. It's really fun like that, like sugar, kind of, really. Lots of different fun ways it can make your life shit. But, you know, people aren't going to quit smoking necessarily just because of that knowledge, because it's been pounded into us since I was a small child that smoking kills you. And if you're my age, say, now, and you're still smoking, you've seen them all, and there's nothing more they can drum into you, really. Anyway, tangent there. So the point is, stop calling things that are not diseases Brilliant. Okay, and just one more thing, because it is kind of linked, is mental health. Mental health is a big one at the moment. Come across quite a few people who say things that don't make sense about mental health problems, and the reason I say they don't make sense is because I'm a tall person, I'm 6'4", and I have these long arms, really long arms, so I can reach things off a really high shelf. Like say when it was 8 foot off the floor, I could probably reach that by going up on tiptoe and get that down, right? Nobody would look at somebody who was a foot shorter than me and say, why can't you reach that? Eddie can, because you look like a complete and utter moron. But when someone turns around, someone's got depression and says, I don't understand why you can't pull yourself together. Other people can. Yeah, it's exactly the same thing, they're different. You wouldn't say to a short person, why can't you reach off the top shelf? So stop saying to people who have mental health problems, just pull yourself together. It's not helpful. Okay, it's not kind of linked, but it is, because it's been referred to as a disease again now, and we all know why things get referred to as diseases. They're called diseases because then a pharmaceutical company can give you an answer, and it will be one of those other answers as well, as always. This one small little pill will solve this massive, vast problem you have. These things don't work. We know that. History has shown that when you've got a complex problem, a simple solution won't work. Okay, that's it really. Peace out, motherfucker.